And now it's time to actually look a little bit at how institutions that we interact with are protecting us and making sure that it's me logging in instead of you logging into my bank account. So I'd like to invite Richard from BioCatch to talk. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. So, good to see you all. Thank you for the invitation. And I want to try and liven the session up. So just to give you a heads up and a bit of warning, there's going to be a little participation. Okay, but in order to sort of give you the mindset of how behavioural biometrics helps companies and organisations see into the, if you like, into the mind of a criminal or a fraudster online, first we need to understand a little bit about behavioural biometrics, okay? So that's the first thing I want to do. And then I'll understand and showcase to you how criminals interact differently, and this allows us an opportunity in order to safeguard ourselves, okay? But let's not forget there's going to be a little bit of interaction because you guys all seem quite nice, although more of you from this angle than it was from at the top of the screen. So if you're not familiar with behavioural biometrics, let's just take a think about it now. What we at BioCatch want to do is understand for our clients people's interactions with their device, and through that device how they engage with an application. And some of you have your smartphones and smart devices close to hand, so you can think about how you engage intuitively with that device, okay? So if you think about behavior, it's not your fingerprints, it's not hardware, it's not how you necessarily might open your phone or your smart device. It's just how you naturally look to physically and cognitively engage with that device. And that allows us, from a big data perspective, from a machine learning perspective, to get some insights into how people generally look to engage with their devices and operate their applications, the everyday applications that you might be using now or this morning or probably later this evening. So this is the interaction perspective. If you've got a smartphone to hand, let's put it in the air for just 1 second. I'll lead the visionary thing. So, okay. So, first of all, if you think about physical behavioural attributes, I see that probably 90% of the room were right-handed, and there were some lefties in the room. Okay? So already I can start to see that we individually have a few behavioural attributes that physically differentiate us from other people. Now, if you think about how you pulled out your smartphone, the angle at which you hold it, how hard you might press on the screen, the way you do anything physically with your device will start to be very individual. And it's something that you subconsciously do. You don't think about how to pick out your phone from your pocket. I just asked you to complete the task, okay? So next time you use your device, from a behavioral perspective, start to think about how you hold it, the angle you use it. Do you use a keyboard? Do you use a screen? What peripherals do you attach to your smart devices? And you can start to think that all of this is available for us in the data. Our smart devices have huge amounts of sensors, accelerometer, gyro, that gives us a great insight into individually and as a population of users how people interact with their phones. So now we know the physical attributes of some of the people. Let's think about how you cognitively engage with applications. And when I talk about cognitive application engagement, I'm really talking about the thing that you want to achieve. How do you navigate an application? How do you scroll? How do you swipe? How do you type? What's the rhythm of these activities? How do you move around the page and make choices? How do you select a date? All of these things are tasks that our brain is intuitively looking to complete. We're not necessarily thinking about how we engage the application. We're thinking about how we conduct the task, okay? So now we can start to understand these types of cognitive choices inside web applications. And I appreciate there's a few, I don't know, new terms, buzzwords, whatever it might be. But what I'm really looking to do is understand for our customers, is the person really who they claim to be behind the device? And we've all heard today about all sorts of cyber threats. You know, we'd probably never touch our device if it wasn't so convenient to conduct the tasks, business, social, and pleasure that we want to do. So, from an enterprise perspective, it's really helpful to know, is the person who's claiming to be someone, the right person behind that identity. And thus for, we want to see behind the device a little bit. Okay? So let's visualize some of the things we just showed you. We can start to see people's impressions physically by maybe the size, muscle density, curvature to their body. You know, I've got pretty fat fingers, there's no hiding from that. So the way I might press and swipe and how I might push down on my screen might be very different from those of you people that obviously spend a little bit more time exercising or in the gym than I probably do, okay? So now we can see how you might hold a device is going to intuitively separate you from other people effectively. Now, just to visualize, if you like, how different people look to scroll. Okay, I just wanted to give you some data inputs here. And you can see 6 different users on the screen and 6 different ways of scrolling on a tablet as it happens. You see the first person, they use left and right fingers. They probably have their device in a portrait mode. The second person here is mainly using a right finger and a little bit of left finger interaction. The person here has a very shaky hand. You probably see this around. I mean, my father, 75 odd, has a very physical, noticeable shake, tremor, if you like, to the way he engages a device. So he looks very different from user 1. Okay. User 4 here, well, generally we put this down to either a very cheap smartphone, I'm sure none of you have those in the room, or a cracked screen. Basically, the people lose their ability to scroll on the surface of the screen, and therefore they start to look different. The way they conduct themselves looks very different. This person is either unique in that they scroll completely vertical, up and off, up, on, down, and off, or perhaps they're using a stylus. Well, we don't know, but it's revealed in the data. So already, if you start to think about mirroring all of the parameters that you could see from your device, your smart devices, you can start to see that individually we start to engage our applications very intuitively, but also very differently probably from the person sat next to us. Now, what we at BioCatch look to do is understand this data in order to try and help our customers think into the mind, if you like, of an online or digital fraudster or criminal. And why is that really relevant? Well, we've all seen probably in the news the Equifax hack. 150 million identities potentially compromised in the United States alone. Maybe 40 million in the UK, and goodness knows where that number finishes. So let me round it up and say, 180 to 200 million identities compromised. Aside from that, someone recently said at a conference I attended that 50% of everyone in a room, their identity or the credentials that people would need to operate and open an identity in an online environment, 50% of those people have their identity already compromised in the so-called dark web. Okay? So that means half of you guys already probably should change your passwords, do all the things that the previous speakers talked about. But let's just think about how a cyber criminal might take this data and try to engage an application. So they steal my data and they try to use that data that they've garnered from some operational process into a real world scenario. And now we can start to understand how fraudsters will think differently about the data behaviorally that they have stolen. Why? There's this idea generally that people can remember 7 digits, short-term, long-term memory, and effectively the way you engage and reveal data online about yourself stores in these 2 sides of your mind. So if you think about some elements of data you can recall very quickly, your phone number, but the way you might reveal it will have a rhythm of this activity to it. Your national insurance number or social identity number, whatever it may be. All of these things are things you might know very well, your address. However, if I steal your data, I have no affinity with your data. I have what we call low data familiarity. So suddenly when I reveal this data online, I look very different from likely a real owner, the probable owner of the information. The other thing that we see with fraudsters who try to perpetrate these sort of application level frauds is that they really have no very high application fluency that a genuine person never has. If you think you want to apply for a credit card for the first time or a loan, it's not something that you do very often likely. And therefore, we wouldn't expect you to have a high level of application fluency. We wouldn't expect you to know the website, answer the next question in milliseconds, cut, copy, paste elements of data that you shouldn't really be able to recall quickly. So all of the ways that we analyze your engagement, when we hold our devices, when we engage with an application, allows us an insight into whether the person claiming their identity, that person behind the device, is likely who they really claim to be. And if you combine these things with the likes of social engineering and phishing that we all see in the news predominantly, or probably most days. My mother was recently hacked by revealing her password to an email scam, a little bit like the demo we saw earlier. She thought she was receiving a proper email from BT. Unfortunately, the same password is also for her Amazon account. And the next day she received a rather nice Samsung S5 Edge or something, which she didn't need and didn't want. So it's so easy to be compromised in the digital world. And as the digitalization and the connection of devices, continue to accelerate, we want to really help organizations provide trust and confidence to their clients. Who is behind the device? So that was a little bit about me. My name is Richard Perry. I'm VP for BioCatch. We're a behavioural biometric organisation, and we help financial institutions and enterprises worldwide protect their customers by delivering the likes of continuous authentication and threat and criminal detection. I'll be around for a few hours later, so if there's any questions or thoughts, I'd be happy to have a chat with you. And as I say, remember, next time you engage with your device, how you might individually do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard, for a very, very insightful presentation.